Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Paul Finebaum radio program, radio only today. Luckily, because it's me, Peter Burns, sitting in for Mr. Paul Finebaum, the mouth of the South. Hair restoration clinic, as I think that's where Paul is all weekend long. Takes a while to get that dome filled. He's going to look a lot different come SEC Nation and when the Finebaum show continues. John Hayes is in studio with me. And, John, you're already laughing. You see, I enjoy when I come in and do the Finebaum show always. Because when I walk in, there's already full phone lines, right? Because everybody wants to talk about, I'm seeing 6 different topics right now from the call screener. But what it is that's what shows the passion of SEC fans. I did sports talk radio for almost a decade. And there was a time of year where you dreaded doing sports talk radio. It was July. Mid-July is when you're like, this is by far the worst thing. I'm just inventing topics. I get excited about doing this show for 2 reasons. One, because of the passionate callers. You guys are already on the line. You're already tweeting. It's great. The second thing is, when it's July here before football season, and I'm filling in for this show, I can say anything that I want, and Paul has to pay the price for it the next week. Is this right? That's basically, there's no rundown today. We've got a couple of guests we may or may not get to. I have no direction for the next 4 hours of this show, which is kind of basically my life in general, as you know. So we'll go anywhere you want to go today. The number remains the same, 855-242-PAUL, 855-242-7285. I guess I lied to you already, and I promise that probably won't be the first time or the last time I do it on this show. But we got a couple of things I do want to touch on. Obviously, I was on vacation the last couple of days. I fly in. I was with G-Mac, Greg McElroy, Jordan Rogers. We did a small little golf vacation. When we land, we all land at the same time. And when you check your phone, you get it off of airplane mode. I take off the airplane mode, and there's 75 different text messages. I'm like, oh, my gosh, they're going so fast I can't even figure out what's happening. Of course, it was a Ole Miss Hugh Freeze story. So I do want to talk about the future of Ole Miss football, what direction it needs to go in, what has happened within the last probably 24 hours, and a lot of Shea Patterson talk, because I think he's one of the most intriguing figures maybe in the next decade for Ole Miss football, and I'll explain why I think that momentarily. SEC Network schedule has come out. The first 3 weeks are already on the board. I'll tell you why there's no reason why the SEC should not go at least will go 14-1. Not maybe. They'll go 14-1 with this schedule, and why John Hayes hates it as well, too. We'll talk Bama, FSU, and we got a little campus conversations. If you don't know, there's college football. We do a great podcast called Championship Drive over the last couple of years for ESPN. We're going to be switching that over. It's going to be called Campus Conversations. Basically the same exact thing. I'm going to be a part of it. You've got Ryan McGee. You've got Matt Schick, Ivan Mazel. You've got to just – who did I miss?
Brad Edwards. He was here yesterday.
Brad Edwards did a great job yesterday. He'll be on it. So for those who see Campus Conversations, it's basically – the same podcast greatness you've had over the last couple of years. We'll talk about it. We're kind of talking a little campus conversations today as we're having Jimbo Fisher, head coach of Florida State, going to join us. I've got to ask him about how close he came to taking the LSU job. I don't know how close he's going to get to giving me an answer on that, but I've got to ask that question. Mark Richt, former Georgia head coach, now coach of Miami. He's going to join us. I'm really excited about this one. David Cutcliffe, the head coach of the Duke Blue Devils, who was the head coach at Ole Miss and spent time at Tennessee, knows this conference inside and out. I want to get his thoughts. He's going to join us, I believe, 4 o'clock today?
That's right.
Yeah, a couple hours he's going to join us to talk about kind of the future of where he thinks Ole Miss football should go. And we're going to try to get to Justin Fuente as well, too. We got Pat Forde going to join us at 3:30. So it is an open book. My first original thoughts, future of Ole Miss football. And I want to start this with Shea Patterson. I said, starting this show, I believe that Shea Patterson is arguably the most influential football player in Ole Miss, I would say, in building the foundation and the program and the legacy since Eli Manning, which wasn't that far removed. but might be one of the maybe the second most important player in Ole Miss football history. And the reason why I say that is because everything stems from what Ole Miss is going to do in the future with what's going to happen within the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's the time frame. We're talking a time frame of 6 to 8 weeks that are going to decide the future of Ole Miss football for the next decade. And it sounds crazy to say, but I saw how a decision of Ryan Perrilloux getting kicked off the team at LSU for transgressions that he had set back the LSU program and especially the development of the quarterback position at LSU for a decade. I don't think they've ever fully recovered since then. It got them into a bad situation. And everything is riding on Shea Patterson and his play on the field, one, and his decision on how he does handle where he plays, because that's still going to be in question. Because Ole Miss, within the next couple of weeks, they're going to find out what happened. The NCAA has come out, I believe it was last Friday. Correct me if I'm wrong on my time frame here. But Friday, let's go back real quick. Ole Miss came through, got the notice of allegations from NCAA. Ole Miss had time to go out there and say, hey, here's how we're going to, our strategy, here's what we're saying about it. They give that letter back to the NCAA. The NCAA then takes it. They all get into a big conference room, I'm sure, with a lot of oak paneling and cigars or whatever they do out there. And they decide, okay, we got your answer, Ole Miss. Here's our response to it. So it's basically a response to a response. Okay, Ole Miss now has that. It's going to be released in the next couple of days. What we will know a little bit more is we won't necessarily know the future here in a couple of days, but in a couple of weeks of when they have a hearing on what's going to happen at Ole Miss. What is the future? Is it a 2-year bowl ban? Is it, hey, the 11 scholarships over 4 years, the bowl ban for this year, if that's it, then it is. We'll know this in the next 8 weeks. Why Shea Patterson is so important is the fact that we have to find out if it is a 2-year bowl ban, does Shea Patterson then decide to transfer? Remember, there's a lot of people that believe he's an NFL-caliber quarterback. I even said, hey, if I was Shea Patterson, I might even redshirt this year. It's a lost year. If I really want to truly stay at Ole Miss, I stay here for 2 years and have some fun. I mean, listen, they redshirt Miss America's there. It's Oxford. It's an unbelievable city. You can have fun. You can build up. The facilities are great. You'll learn how to become a better player. But the big question is, in the next 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to find out if there is a bowl ban. And why that matters for that second year is then if that happens, folks, players can transfer. And I don't think Shea Patterson wants to transfer. I think Shea Patterson loves it there. His dad has talked about how he loves it there. Shea Patterson had the quote this spring where he said, if I wasn't playing football, I'd be going to school at Ole Miss. And rightfully so. There's a lot of people that would like to make that decision. Now, the question is, though, if there is an additional bowl ban, what happens at that point is Shea Patterson has to decide, not if he loves Ole Miss football, will there be enough players around the Ole Miss football program to make him an NFL-caliber quarterback? That's the big question. And a good quarterback can save a lot of things. And if Shea Patterson decides that he's staying at Ole Miss regardless, and he plays and balls on the field, the road to recovery for Ole Miss down in Oxford is going to be 100 times quicker if it is going in any other direction. 855-242-7285. Let's take a phone call. Mobley is in Oxford, Mississippi. Scene of everything right now. What's going on, Mobley?
Oh, man, just trying to take all this in. It's quite a bit.
How's the feeling down in Oxford, boots on the ground right here, right now?
It's pretty dark. It's pretty gloomy, you could say. Everybody's kind of doesn't really know what's going on. We've got, reports that Miles flew in to come, interview for the job. No one really knows where we're headed.
By the way, the latest I had seen that was not true. But go ahead.
That's not true. That's a rumor that's floating around town. Anyways, everybody's just kind of worried about where our program's headed and how long it's going to take for us to get back to where we were 2 years ago, if we can accomplish that in a reasonable time frame.
What is your reasonable expectation? You're an Ole Miss fan. You were on hold before this show even started today, passionate about this. If I tell you things have gotten status quo in how many years, you'd be okay. What is the status quo you want things to be normal by, or what you expect things to be normal by?
To be realistic about it, I'd say 6 years.
6 years.
Yep. That's
Why do you
how
say
long
that?
they're-
Why do you say
to get
6?
to everywhere. Well, because Ole Miss has been one to rise and demise. We've never been consistent. If you came in, had some good stuff going on, lasted 2 years, of course it's over. So I think it's going to be at least another 6-7 years until we're relevant again, to be totally honest.
See, Bubba, I don't believe that. Thank you for the phone call. 855-242-7285. I'm going to take more phone calls on the other side. You can hit us up on Twitter, at Peter Burns, ESPN as well. Pat Forde's going to join us with a little bit more here in about 15 minutes. But I'm going to tell you why 6 years would be an absolute failure for Ole Miss and why I expect it to happen quicker. That on the other side. Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum. Welcome back to the Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in for the Mouth of the South, Mr. Paul Finebaum. Enjoying his summer vacation for this week. It is Peter Burns and Mr. John Hayes here in studio with you. Your phone call is always welcome, 855-242-PAUL. That's 855-242-7285. Charles, Wyatt, and, of course, Millie, I see you on hold. Hang tight. We're going to get with you in just a moment. We just had a caller talking about the rebuild process for Ole Miss and how long reasonably it should take. And Hayes and I were, because I hear him say 6 years, right? Hayes, sounds that's eons.
Sounds realistic to me.
I have an unborn daughter, and I think that she's going to be in school by that time. That's eons to me. 6 years in college football is lifetimes.
It's
right?
longer than the average coaching.
Right.
Most coaches in college football are around for 4.5, 5 years. So if you're going to say that it takes 6 years, it'll probably be on their second coach at that point.
And it's happened. It took Penn State probably 5 years, your team that you like, after they had bowl issues that they were able to kind of get back. USC, after they found out that Reggie Bush and everybody and their mother was getting paid through that situation, like 03, those years, it took them 4 years. Hell, SMU never got back because of the death penalty, and that's why they've come back. Miami, it's still kind of on the way back. We're going to be talking to Mark Richt a little bit later in the program. Heck, Ohio State had hit the ground running, and I don't have an issue. I mean, with Ole Miss football, I don't think it's a 6-year deal, but I think it's also a situation where they have to look at how do they play the notice of the hearings that they're going to have, right?
Well, let me ask you this: the programs that we just mentioned, Ole Miss is an outlier when you consider the history of college football and the greatness of those 5 programs. USC, Penn State, Ohio State, Ole Miss.
Their foundation
Miami.
of college football schools. I get that.
There's one outlier in that group of 5, and, it's Ole Miss. And so to say that Ole Miss is going to rebuild as fast as a Penn State or a USC, are they there yet?
Yes, and the reason why they're not there in name cachet, especially throughout college football, but what they are there with, do they have good facilities? Check, that's important.
Yes.
Do they have a talent-rich environment in the Southeast, whether it's the state of Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, where they get players from? Do they have that? Yes, so those are 2 things they're already going for. Do they have the SEC network? And I say that all joking aside because I work for them, but do they have an opportunity to continue to make money as a university and to be able to showcase all their games on there and all of their sports? Yes, they do. More importantly, do they pay like a Penn State? Do they pay like a Miami, like an Ohio State, like a USC? If you're going to pay somebody and you have a lot of money to pay, I mean, listen, with no buyout and no termination clause, or the termination clause that they use with the Hugh Freeze situation, what that means is that this is not somebody saying, hey, listen, we can't afford to fire a coach because now the buyout's $27 million and we're going to be paying this guy for 17 years and what happens, whatnot. We have to defer it because we don't have the money. No, they have that money right here, right now. And there's not a coach that's going to be worth his medal that's going to command that type of money, which I think Ole Miss will pay. That's not going to be able to come in there and recruit and be able to rebuild very quickly. So for 6 years, I think that's absolutely ludicrous. But it has everything to do, again, with what's going to happen on whether or not the NCAA comes in with two seasons bowl bans, or is it going to be one? And it has everything to do with Shea Patterson. Shea Patterson is the most important player, arguably, since Eli Manning, maybe the second one of all time.
I can think of a fantastic analogy. At the same position, Penn State, when they found themselves in just the depths of hell, this program was on the brink of the death penalty. Many people were calling for that. Joe Paterno gets fired. He dies. Bill O'Brien takes the job. Christian Hackenberg,
Yep.
a 5-star quarterback prospect, came to Penn State, even though the school was under the bowl ban, and set the example for other players in the future. You can still come here and have success. He gets drafted in the NFL, and he holds that program together. Shea Patterson is in that exact same situation.
And if he does that, and if enough players, and Shea Patterson is a leader that a lot of people think that he is at Ole Miss, if he can convince his guys around him to say, you know what, we started here, let's build this, therein lies the roadmap. The roadmap to rebuilding where Ole Miss should be or successful is there. Like you can use that Penn State roadmap. By the time you have a good quarterback and he can play, but he has to make sure he has guys around him offensively on the O-line. He has time to throw it. He has to have guys that can catch the ball around him as well too, because he wants to show that he can make it on the next level. And now if he can't, if everybody decides, hey, we're out, then that changes everything. More importantly, we got somebody on the phone real quick. Somebody named Kubiak. Does this name ring a bell to you, Mr. Hayes?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
Hey!
here filling in for the Paul Finebaum Show on the Paul Finebaum Radio Network.
Mr. Kubiak, how are you doing, sir? Are you how long's your beard right now for being on vacation?
It's pretty long. It's getting there. I'll shave before we're back on TV. But I had to ask a couple questions for you. How many SEC championships does Ole Miss have?
Not enough.
And championship game appearances?
Not enough.
So, what is their outlier? You had the caller on who said 6 years, and you think that's too early. I think if in 6 years they can win 8 games, a year, don't you think that's pretty good for being back? I mean, normally they're an 8-9 win a year program, and what Hugh was able to do there was win more.
But the question is what is being back?
Miami.
The question is what is being back? And for Ole Miss, we're not talking national championship. For Ole Miss right now, we are talking about being in contention for the SEC West. I think that's fair. I don't mean that as a slight to Ole Miss fans, but I think that being in contention for the SEC West, which they're not going to be in this year, is an expectation level. I don't think it's 6 years to get back to that point. I believe that it could be done in 3 years, but I think it has everything to do with Shea Patterson being able to show that this team can win games right here, right now.
Well, who's going to falter in that time then? Let's assume it's not going to be Alabama. So is that going to be? It's going to be LSU? Is it going to be Auburn? Is it going to be? Is Arkansas going to have to reset and get away from Bielema? I mean, every other program in the West is a little bit more stable. And
I'll tell you this: if I was buying, in Kubiak, I will say this: if I was buying stock. Future stock, not stock right here, right now, and just what value. If I was buying stock in a division in the SEC, I'd be buying everything I can out of the SEC East before I'd be buying the West. Because the West is top-heavy with Alabama, and I believe that there are low-hanging fruit, that there is money to be made, margins to be made on buying stock in the SEC East over the next couple of years. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I don't see Ole Miss being in contention. I mean, even at the top, even when they were ranked in the top 2 in the country, they fell off and they didn't win then. I mean, what other point, how much higher can they be in contention to get back to the West? And I just don't think it's going to be Ole Miss's time in the near future. Plus, the court of public opinion, if they do get back there in the next 4 years, what are people going to say?
The question is whether or not whoever comes in is going to have to be on the up and up on every single thing that they do. Much the same situation that's going on with Baylor right now, Matt Rule taking that job, is that there is going to be a public perception. Same thing with James Franklin when he took over the job at Penn State. He was going to have to do it. There was a roadmap to get it done, and that's what Ole Miss, and that's what Ross Bjork and Ole Miss fans have to take a look at is how do you kind of put this going in the next direction. And that's truly what it is. And it can be done. I'm saying it's not a national championship caliber. Maybe. Listen, LSU hasn't been a national championship team since 2007, right? I mean, look at, you've had Auburn that has had the 1 year. It's been Alabama. So for Ole Miss to get back to where they were, which I believe is a 8 to 10 wins program, I don't think it takes 6 years. I think it takes 3. And more importantly, I'm looking forward to seeing your beard soon. You got any more final thoughts?
No, that's it. I got to go. I'm on my way to a golf retreat with A.J. McCarron and Jay Cutler. So you guys have fun. I'll talk to you later.
I hope you get tatted up as well. 855-242-PAUL. Your phone call is coming up, as well as Pat Forde. We'll ask him about what he thinks the expectation level is for Ole Miss to be back at where they were. 6 years just sounds crazy to me. Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul Finebaum. Finebaum's show, rolling with you. Peter Burns in for Mr. Paul Finebaum. 855-242-7285. That's 855-242-PAUL. You can always hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns, ESPN. You can hit up this man at Pat Forde on Twitter. I believe that's your Twitter account handle, if I'm not mistaken, right, Pat? What is the proper Pat Forde Twitter account?
It is actually at Yahoo 40, F-O-R-D-E. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to make sure I got it correct. Because I go to you for mostly college football news, but I have to tell you, your best work is swimming and diving. It was so funny. We were at SEC Media Days this year, and Commissioner Sankey announces that the SEC Golf Championships and I believe swimming and diving finals were going to be broadcast on SEC Network. And I think as soon as swimming and diving championships came up, I think I saw Pat basically like fist bump in his chair. And he was like, louder in the back for everybody. You were so excited about it. Before we get into what I brought you in here, what's the huge connection there?
Well, I've had 2 SEC swimmers. My oldest is a Missouri graduate, swam there. Middle son is a Georgia swimmer right now, and my daughter is going to be a swimmer at Stanford next year. So we're all in.
My goodness, that is some good genes, my friend. All right, so you've been covering this story, the Ole Miss saga that has transpired, really, and I don't even want to call it over the last couple of weeks, because that's where a lot of the national media kind of swooped in. You've been on this story for quite a long time. What is the latest? I mean, your article's out there right now talking about how this thing progressed. What's the latest that fans need to know about?
Thomas Mars, who is Houston Nutt's attorney, whose dogged pursuit of Mississippi and Hugh Freeze helped really push Hugh Freeze out of his job last week, is still on the attack. He is still threatening to FOI more phone records and to try to get involved in more things, uncovering more things at Mississippi. And he's pushing very hard, I think, to make this so uncomfortable for Mississippi that they make a settlement with Houston Nutt, who has sued the school. So he is not going away anytime soon. And yes, believe it or not, as ugly as it's been, it could still get uglier.
And so that's the in play. This is not so much as we've heard, hey, listen, Houston Nutt just wants an apology. He just feels like he was wronged one way or another. It's a he said thing. But do you feel like that's where this is coming from? And do you feel like this is this Houston Nutt saying this to his lawyer, or is this his lawyer saying, hey, I'm a bulldog. I'm going to go do what I do. This is what I do.
Well, I think the original goal was a public apology and perhaps a financial settlement of some kind. But this has gotten way beyond that, because Ole Miss stiff-armed Nutt and stiff-armed his lawyer and basically said, we're not even going to listen to you, much less apologize to you. And that's what really ratcheted up the stakes in all of this. And it's kept escalating, to the point of requesting phone records, going after things on those documents, and then just keeping going from there. So, an apology now may still stave off some of this, but I'm not sure. I think that there needs to be an apology and a large lump of cash heading to Houston Nutt, I think, for this thing to stop anytime soon.
Here's the deal, Pat. You can say anything about me, about my golf swing, about whatever, my hairdo. It doesn't look as good as Jordan Rodgers, but as long as it comes with a 20 or 2, I'm going to be expedited in saying that. All right, give for this timeline, because for the average SEC fan that wants to get down to it, it's kind of convoluted. But where we're at right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the NCAA, Ole Miss said, "Hey, here's our response to your allegations." NCAA has received those, they've studied them, and they gave their response to Ole Miss's response now, correct? Like NCAA has told Ole Miss, here's how we're responding to what you said happened?
If that response has been received by Ole Miss, yet we don't know it, which would be par for the course because Ole Miss has kept almost all of this stuff very secretive. So maybe they've already gotten it, but if so, we don't know that publicly. But once that response is received by Ole Miss, we can basically start the clock towards setting a hearing date, and we will go from there. We will know when there will be a hearing, and then where there will be a hearing, probably sometime in September, October, and then a resolution 6 to 8 weeks after that. So hopefully this whole thing gets tied up into a bow in 2017, but it'll be the latter stages of 2017.
And pardon my ignorance here, and there's a lot of it, and when it comes to the NCAA and how these things work. And if you don't know it, listen, I just figured you know it more than I do here. For this, if the NCAA comes out, and there has to be a hearing no matter what, or can Ole Miss, in essence, agree to what the NCAA responds back and just goes, you know what? Maybe there isn't a second bowl ban or a second-year bowl ban. They go, we're fine. Does there need to be a hearing, or are there always hearings on these type things, or do you know?
Yeah, at this stage, we are past what would be called summary disposition, and that does happen when both sides basically agree on all facts in the case.
Got it.
And then you don't have to sit down in a hearing. But that's not going to happen here because Ole Miss has vigorously disputed some of the allegations. So we will head to a hearing at some point in time, and they will have it out in the room. And, Peter, an interesting dynamic in this is now that Hugh Freeze has been forced out, he will still be there and be in the room for this.
Right.
Will he still be lockstep with Ole Miss, and will they be lockstep with him, or are they going to turn on each other now that they are no longer tied at the hip? It would be great if we were allowed in the room, but that's going to be an interesting subplot to this.
How much do you think Hugh Freeze's resignation plays into the NCAA's decision?
I don't think at all. I think there are some people within the Mississippi community that are hopeful that him being out of the picture will help them. It'll mitigate any penalties. But here's the thing. He's not out of the picture because of the NCAA investigation. He's out for something totally unrelated, so they can't really say, well, we got rid of the problem here, because they were standing staunchly behind Hugh Freeze from an NCAA standpoint. So I don't think the Committee on Infractions goes at all any easier on Mississippi because Hugh Freeze is no longer the coach.
We've been discussing next steps for Ole Miss, right? Spin it forward, what happens and what transpires next. And we've had Ole Miss fans call into this program, and they've been the last couple of days and emailing and tweeting, sending letters to our offices, wanting to know what happens next. For them to be back, and by back I mean 8-9 win seasons, in somewhat of a contention to win the SEC West, because I think that's what I know Ole Miss of as of late, and under Hugh Freeze. How many years does Pat Forde think it takes to get back to that point after everything that's going to happen?
Maybe never. I don't know. It can happen, certainly, and I think, in the SEC West, every dog eventually has some kind of a day, whether it's 9 wins, 10 wins. You may not win the division because, Ole Miss, for one, has never won the division in 25 years. But can they get back to winning and be competitive? Yeah, but I think it could take a while, and I think it will largely depend what the sanctions are from this Committee on Infractions hearing. If they have a second straight bowl ban for 2018, players are going to be leaving like crazy. The job's going to be hard to fill. And I think that is the kind of thing where you're looking at some real long-term lasting damage from all of this. And it could be years and years before they get it back together.
How much? Just real quick. I didn't mean to jump you there, but how much do the bowl games mean now? Because I've seen it. Unless you're playing for a national championship, how much does that mean to a recruit that wants to play on the next level?
I mean, it's a fair point. That's appealing to some. It's probably not appealing to all. And I think that's a changing measurement as we go forward. But if you're banned from the postseason 2 straight years, the upperclassmen by NCAA rule will be eligible to transfer without having to sit out. And so then you're going to have guys saying, okay, well, you know what, we're out of here. I'm going to go somewhere else. And that's, I think, where it's a major, major problem. And mostly I think recruits want to play for a winner and somebody that can get them to the NFL. And if you're going to go, if they're really decimated by scholarship cuts, by players transferring, by not being able to hire a good coach, and you're going 4-8, guess what? Other people aren't going to want to go there. So it's the kind of thing that I think can have self-sustaining damage depending how significant the penalties are.
You can find him on Twitter at Yahoo. Forde, for the swimming and diving stuff is great, but you have been on top of this story. It's great information, and we just got notification that Ole Miss has received its response from the NCAA regarding the university's response to the notice of allegations. So Ole Miss is they do have that right now. Now we have to figure out when the clock starts ticking for that hearing. Pat, we appreciate the time and continued success, all right?
Thank you, Peter. My pleasure.
There you go. Pat Forde, Yahoo Sports. Interesting. And it made me think of the one absolute way that Ole Miss, the no-brainer for Ole Miss to get by everything that's happening and how they can get by it quick. I'll tell you what it is next. 855-242-PAUL. Peter Burns in for Pat. Paul Finebaum Show. Peter Burns in, sitting down for Mr. Finebaum himself. You can hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. A lot of Ole Miss talk and the future of Ole Miss football. We're going to be joined by former Ole Miss head coach and now the head coach of the Duke Blue Devils, David Cutcliffe. I have to ask him about what is going down in Oxford and what he thinks about the whole situation. Of course, Matt Luke is the new interim head coach for this year. Where they go in the future truly is anyone's guess because a lot of it is in limbo. I just tweeted that I think Shea Patterson's next 3 months will define Ole Miss football for the next decade. That if he truly wants to leave a legacy, he's going to have a chance to leave one at Ole Miss, and that could be the decision to stay at Ole Miss, which he has said he wants to do. If he's able to win on the field, he helps the rebuilding process. But if he looks around and a lot of guys have transferred, and he can't become the next big thing in college football because basically the cupboard's empty. I mean, I don't care how good of a chef you are. If you don't have ingredients in the kitchen, you can't make a good meal. And that's what Shea Patterson and every person around college football right now is wanting to know what happens over the next couple of weeks, probably the next 6-8 weeks of what's going to go down with Ole Miss. And that has everything to do with where they go in the next direction. And I said the easiest thing to do. And it was interesting because Pat Forde of Yahoo Sports had just joined us. He said, guys want to know it's not necessarily how important it is for the bowl game. It's how important it is how they can get to the next level. How these guys, and that's what every SEC coach does, right? Every SEC coach comes in and says, hey, listen, you're going to be here. You're going to be a great college football player, and we're going to prepare you. We're going to give you the skills to play on Sunday, to help your family out, to be a star. You're going to have the best nutrition. You're going to have the best training facilities. You're going to have the best coaching. You're going to be in front of the best fans. In fact, you're going to be in more fans in SEC stadiums than they will on Sundays. Sundays in the NFL, that's going to look like a breeze rather than going to Bryant-Denny Stadium or Tiger Stadium on a Saturday night. That's what they're selling. And listen, I know a lot. I mean, I can't hear any other great words from Matt Luke, the interim head coach at Ole Miss, than I've already heard. Everyone says that this was the absolute right choice in a time of turmoil to lead Ole Miss. But I think instead of rehashing the same 15 names that a bunch of lazy people put out on who should be the Ole Miss head coach if they don't go with Matt Luke, I think they have to find someone who's going to answer that, much like Coach Cal has answered that at Kentucky. And what I mean by that is I believe that if I'm Ole Miss, I would find someone that has NFL head coaching experience, that knows the game of the NFL in and out. And by no other means other than to say, you know what? Yeah, we can have success here in college. But why Nick Saban has so much success as Alabama is that success is just a byproduct of the hard work that they put in because he wants to put guys into the league. not because a college coach wants to be a good college coach. That just happens to be the case. So for me, if I'm Ole Miss, I take a look at NFL and, more importantly, guys that have NFL connections and say, who is a person that I can come in here that's going to kind of change this culture of Ole Miss football. But more importantly, I can sit in front of a recruit and say, I'm going to look you square in the eye. I'm going to tell you the truth. And right now, if I get in my phone, I can call 30 GMs in the NFL and tell them, you need to watch this kid play. I can call NFL scouts and watch this kid play. Not that a lot of college coaches don't do that. They do that right now. But I think that is the quickest highway to having success for Ole Miss football, is that I would definitely take a look at the NFL coaching ranks and those guys that have the strongest connections. Because if you don't have those strong connections, if you're just a college coach, I think that road may be 4, 5, 6 years. But if you have a guy that can look into a recruit and say, you know what, hey, I get it, there's a bowl ban, I understand. But what we're going to be able to do here is we're going to be able to put you in front of the best nutritionists. We're going to be able to put you in front of facilities that are unheard of. I'm going to be able to have every single scout that I know here watching every single practice that's allowed, every single game. Because it's not about Ole Miss football right now. Ole Miss is going to have success because of your success getting ready for the NFL. That's what I'm selling if I'm Ole Miss going forward. Now, Ross Bjork or whoever, if they listen to me or if they decide to go that way, I have no idea. But if you put me in charge of Ole Miss football, that's the direction you have to go. Don't zig. You need to zag. You need to go in a different direction. 855-242-PAUL is the number. David Cutcliffe, Duke head coach, former Ole Miss head coach, joins us next. Peter Burns in for Finebaum.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
The head coach of the Duke Blue Devils, David Cutcliffe, 10th season at Duke, a decade coach. How does that sound? Does it hit you like that it's been there a decade?
Yeah, it's shocking. And when you start looking at the tenures of Duke football coaches, that is definitely an outlier.
You go back and look, and it's something me and John Hayes were talking about before the show today of the success you've had at Duke and continue to kind of get it to that level. And in the SEC, as you know, being at Ole Miss and Tennessee, it traditionally was always kind of football schools, right, outside of Kentucky. And then in the ACC, sometimes that's a little bit different, and especially with Duke and maybe even North Carolina. What is that like when trying to get young men who want to be the big man on campus competing against the other big men on campus, literally the tall men on campus, the basketball squad, which traditionally always got the headlines?
Yeah, it's well, the first thing I talk with our coaches about is to use it as an advantage. The name recognition regarding Duke was in regards to academics and basketball. So when we go into any state, any city, anywhere in the United States, people know who we are. And then the job is to get them on campus, and then it's got to be real. We had to build a football program, and the football program, like all of Duke University, is about excellence. And so we've kind of played off that. If it's about excellence, that's what we're about, and that's what Duke football is.
How have you had success being likable? Because I feel like in NCAA football, there's a lot of coaches that have success, but they aren't exactly well liked. I mean, when I talked to people and I told them that I was interviewing David Cutcliffe today, there wasn't a person that told me that they didn't have a bad thing to say about you. I mean, what's something bad about you? Do you leave like the toilet seat up? Do you not mow the lawn when you're supposed to? Give me some dirt on
you.
yourself.
You want me to give you my wife's cell number?
There it is. Let's go.
She could tell you plenty of things. I am really impatient, much more than people might realize, and that's not a good quality to have outside of maybe being a football coach. But, I'll tell you this, when it comes to being liked or not being liked, I think a lot of that is about how we're raised. Just treat people well, and we've tried to do that everywhere we've been.
There's no doubt about it. You spent time down in Oxford. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now down with the Ole Miss Rebels football program. What's your take on the situation, and what advice would you have for that team to kind of put itself back into a good spot?
Well, Matt Luke played for us, and Matt Luke has coached for us at 3 different places, and so I've talked with Matt almost daily since last Thursday, I think that he's on track. It is that you just focus on football. And I said, talk less and do more. I think the thing that you have to do is just put the noise away, good or bad. And if you start, sometimes you get those adverse situations create unity and creates focus. And if you just take that and use it to your advantage, then the focus becomes so intense that nothing else matters. And that's literally, and Matt was a part of it, how we started at Duke. You asked earlier about the basketball thing. Well, we had such an intense focus on Duke football and doing everything we could to legitimize Duke football. That's just the day-to-day of Ole Miss football right now. That's a lot of adversity they've dealt with. And focus on one thing, playing the game of football. You're not going to rewrite anything right now. Focus on playing the game of football.
We saw it with Ed Ogeron. He was interim coach, obviously at USC, didn't get that job, got the job at LSU. We saw it with Dabo and, of course, the success he's had at Clemson. And you went from being kind of a coordinator from a positions coach to a head coaching gig early in your career. For Matt Luke, what's the hardest thing? I know you told him to coach football, but you can only prepare somebody for the onslaught that comes. What was the hardest part of taking that jump?
Well, time management. You're going from taking care of your position or even your side of the ball to everything comes back to you. And you've got to learn that there's a time for all of it, but you have to prioritize your time extremely well to be successful head football coach. The other thing I've loved about Matt all his life is that Matt genuinely cares about people. If you lose that, you're going to lose everything about the organization. It's not about you. It's about them. And I've continuously reminded Matt, everybody's patting Matt on the back. Everybody wants to talk to you suddenly. Everybody wants to.
You're the best friend of everybody,
yeah.
Right?
And, it's about them. There are people that walk in a room, and the way they walk in a room, you can tell they're saying, "Here I am." You have to be one of those people that when you walk in the room, it should be there you are. And that's, in my opinion, what a head football coach and a leader has to be, and I think Matt can do that.
What's it like for coaches getting that second opportunity to be a head coach? You had it after Ole Miss and having success at Duke. We see it with Will Muschamp in his second time around, even Ed Ogeron in his second time around. How much did you change from the first day you took over at Ole Miss to the first day you took over at Duke?
Quite a bit. I think we learned those lessons the hard way, and I think experience and time is a great teacher. Failures that we have or don't have are almost always associated with our people, the people you've surrounded yourself with, learning to make decisions based on all of the right principles and reasons. And I think we've done a much better job of that at Duke than what we did the first time, although we had a lot of success at Ole Miss. We actually had the most successful 5-year run that they've had, and but there are no shortcuts. There were holes in some of our consistency with people, and you can't have that. It's got to use a young person's term to some level. That's got to be real. You got to make it real, and I think if you start trying to implement things that aren't really what you believe in, do things you don't believe in, you're going to find yourself in trouble.
Outside looking in and taking a look at the SEC, and obviously Finebaum listeners that are listening to us right now are always locked in so much to the SEC. How good of a job is that Ole Miss job?
Well, they've done a tremendous job with facilities, daylight and dark from when we began there in 1999, as it should be. You have a great administration. I think Ross Bork's done an incredible job. You have the SEC network, which is, I think, really made every SEC program right now much better because the finances are better. If you can attract good people to your staff, which I think you can there, you got a state that's got a lot of athletes in it. You got a geographic proximity that lets you get to Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama. You got as good a chance there to be successful as you would anywhere in the Western Division.
How real is that love or hate in between Ole Miss and Mississippi State? Always asking guys that were in the middle of it. I've been down to both, and I love seeing it between them two because this lights another couple of fires. How real is that relationship?
It's real amongst the fans. I don't know if I always felt that as a coach to coach. I have had some friends that have coached there, but I'm going to tell you now, it's cutthroat amongst the fans. They will do anything and everything they can to see the other one fail before they'll worry about their own success. That's when you have a dangerous rivalry.
Do you feel that's the same way in the ACC? I mean, I feel it when I get phone callers that call into Finebaum. There's definitely a different level in their voice. Do you feel that, or is it more of a gentlemanly agreement in the ACC, or what's the difference?
Well, I think it's a little different. I know, like with us in North Carolina, there are fans that don't like each other, but the failure of the other one is not more important than your own success. You know, that's where you really draw a line. Right. And I tell people all the time, when you pull into an SEC stadium, you're going to see everything from a lot of birds flying to some absolute rising moons as you enter into a stadium. I haven't seen that yet in the ACC.
Well, is there one road trip you go back and look at it in your career at Tennessee and Ole Miss that you could go back and you tell stories on that hey, it was one time we went to this it just shocked me, not in a horrible way, but just kind of was eye opening.
Well, LSU, the first time I went in with an Ole Miss team, I don't think I understood that rivalry. I don't think many people do. Every game we played in Oxford, at the end of the national anthem, somebody would yell, "Go to hell, LSU." Well, the same thing was occurring in Baton Rouge. And when we went in there as an Ole Miss team, they would not let our bus go by. They were spraying something as if they were defumigating the bus, rocking the bus. And then that's when I saw two elderly ladies absolutely moon our bus. It was not a pretty sight, I promise you.
Two old ladies giving you the Baton Rouge welcome.
Yeah, and, I wasn't expecting all of this, and then I came out of the locker room pregame to walk the field, and I was being burned in effigy in the student section, and about that time somebody prodded or hit that tiger cage that was hidden around the corner. That tiger hits that cage and roars. And I said, okay, this is going to be an interesting night. And thank goodness the good guys won. We went in there in 1999 and beat LSU and ran for well over 300 yards. So that was a good night for the Rebels.
Did you see the two old ladies on the way out?
I did not. I looked for them. I did because they were tailgating, And I didn't see many people around with their purple and gold on after that one.
Last question for you. I've been asking this one. It's kind of a fun one for everybody. If I could put David Cutcliffe in a cameo of any one television show, well, I don't care if it's Sopranos, if it's Seinfeld, whatever. If David Cutcliffe could be in a cameo of one episode of one television show, which one you taking?
I got it, and I know what I would do. I would be in Cheers, and those of you that know Cheers, you got Norm and Cliff sitting there next to each other. I'm going to come take a seat on the bench or on the stool next to Cliff. I'm going to listen to him a minute, look at him, and say, "You don't know what the hell you're talking about." So that's me on Cheers.
Oh, that is fantastic. All right. Yeah, Sam Malone behind the bar.
You got it.
We'll have a good one. Coach, I appreciate it. Like I know that you're busy this week, and great to talk to you. Some great insight on Ole Miss. Continued success at Duke, and I hope to connect with you soon, all right?
All right. Take good care. Have a great day.
There he is, in between Cliff and Norm on Cheers. Maybe they'll go on Jeopardy, like the old Who are people that have never been in my living room, Alex? Technically, that's not correct. 855-242-PAUL. Your phone calls coming up next. We got a wide open segment. Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum. It's actually Paul Finebaum on the keyboard, the synthesizer on this. Little did you know, Paul Finebaum, a crazy BPM electronic dance lifestyle. No one knew about it. That is an absolute lie. 855-242-PAUL is the phone number. It's Peter Burns in the rest of the week for Mr. Paul Finebaum, taking your calls as always. Go to Paris, Mizzou. Kim's been waiting on hold for well over, I think, almost, I want to say 45 minutes. Kim, what's happening?
Hey, Peter, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How's your summer treating you?
Well, pretty good, not too bad. Hey, listen, I wanted your and John's opinion. I've been hearing a lot of people thinking that Ole Miss just needs to clean house. And I don't know how safe Ross Bjork's job is, but what do you think about this if they do have to clean house? Archie Manning, the new AD.
Archie Manning, the new possible AD. I'll tell you this. I think what they'll have to look at for Ole Miss, and this is no different than this is not just Ole Miss or any other SEC school or any other NCAA school. They're going to wait till all the facts come out here for the NCAA, right? They're going to find out what exactly happens, and at that point, they're going to have to decide, what do we do? Is this contained? You know, it's like a surgeon. Have we contained this and removed it and we can move forward, or we need to extract more? And that's as simple as it's going to be. To say what's going to happen, I really don't know, because the NCAA tends to just spin a wheel on these type things, right? It's almost like pin the tail on the donkey. They put on a blindfold. We have no idea. There's a reason why it's been about 15 years in North Carolina still hasn't gotten anything, right? It baffles me. So it's too early to say that. As far as for Archie Manning being a possible athletic director, if I'm Archie, why would I want that job? And the only reason why I say it, not that it's not a great job, Kim, but more the fact of Archie's got the perfect situation. He could be an ambassador to Ole Miss football. He can, make a phone call to anybody who wants. Everyone wants to meet with Archie. Archie has more power as the athletic director at Ole Miss than probably Ross Bjork right now. Just because his career, his history, his legacy holds so much weight that I don't think he would want to be bogged down in, hey, we got a rules change coming in for women's softball. We need to decide about it. I just don't see that happening. But I think Archie Manning is somebody that will always have the ears of people that matter at Ole Miss. So I think that's where I stand on it.
Okay. Well, I just wonder also, when are all these left field hits going to quit coming? It just seems like the shoe never stops dropping on this story.
Listen, I don't think it's anytime soon. I think that as long as Houston Nutt still has some type of lawsuit against Ole Miss, until that is situated and figured out one way or another, I think you'll still continually hear a drip, drip, drip. You hope that it's already done, but I don't know if it's anytime soon, Kim. Thank you so much for the phone call. Got to go to this guy. Always love talking to him. Daryl in Columbus. What's happening, my man?
Well, first of all, I would say, you know what? Finding a good head coach is going to be hard, because the allegations are supposedly serious, right? So they're going to get slammed with probation pretty hard, I think. That's coming. But let me give you my theory on Hugh Freeze, okay? I think there's a good chance that he called to the escort. Calling the escort services could have been not for personal reasons. Could have been for recruits. I mean, trying to use that strategy for as far as trying to influence a big time kid to come to school. I think that's a possibility. I think the media has jumped on it, and we just canned the worst, but it's still bad. And I also, let me ask you this: I find it hard to believe that attorney just stumbled across this number, okay, and dialed it up. I'm thinking more like somebody that he thinks probably had a rat in the grass that saw an opportunity to make some money, especially with a lawsuit coming down the line, and rat him out to find out that it's true, and boom, he's going to get paid. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, there was I think it's Stephen Robertson, a huge Mississippi State fan. Mark Schlabach had the article about it that basically he was writing a book about it and just would not give it up. I mean, true rivalry fan guy said, hey, I'm going to be a part of this, and starts digging, and it got into it. As far as what happened on the phone call, it's gotten to the point where I don't even care. Because at this point, I think it's moot to the NCAA investigation. I don't think we talked to Pat Forde about it earlier, and he believed that the same spot is that it's not going to have any kind of control going forward on how the NCAA rules on this stuff. What we do know is that Ross Bjork and Ole Miss said, hey, there was something that was troubling here. We nipped it in the bud. There was no buyout, and that's the end of it. I mean, as far as Hugh Freeze's life, I don't know. The band has always been nice to me, but I'm not here to say what has happened or what has not. All I know is that he's no longer the head coach at Ole Miss, and so I think
the final nail in the coffin was when he lied about it, because maybe it's a spur of the moment. He didn't have time to think it out, but he had to know that they were going. There was more numbers there, and that right there was. They usually don't ask questions they don't already have the answer to. But I'm going to tell you, the two coaches I would go after, which it won't get neither one of them. I would go after Lane Kiffin, okay, or I would go after David Cutcliffe. I think David Cutcliffe he won't leave Duke, but I think he would be a great fit there. I think the probation is going to hurt him as far as finding a good coach right off the bat. As far as Hughes Freeze goes, I'd sign him tomorrow as an offensive coordinator. I mean, he'll get another opportunity down the road. He's going to work his way back up. I believe he'll find another position as an offensive coordinator. The man was very good with X's and O's. He just wasn't very good with triple X's and Ho's. See you, Peter.
You go look in what Bobby Petrino had. I mean, Bobby Petrino is the head coach at Louisville and just had a Heisman Trophy winner, right? I mean, listen, what Bobby Petrino has done is about 500 times worse as far as in my mind. So, listen, if you can, and we've seen that, right? We've seen that if you have success calling plays, if you know you can have an offense, you're going to get an opportunity to play. As far as Lane Kiffin, I will tell you, there is a 0.0001% chance of happening that Lane Kiffin would be the head coach at Ole Miss. And the only reason why it's 0.0001% is that if every single person who ever coached the game of college football decided they no longer wanted to coach football, and Lane Kiffin was the only person standing alive in the history of college football landscape to get that job. There's no way Ole Miss, after having to deal with this, would go with a petulant child like Lane Kiffin. It's not happening. Peter Burns in for Paul Finebaum, 855-242-7285. That's 855-242-PAUL. Your calls, and Heather Dinich going to join us in studio just a moment. To the Paul Finebaum radio program. Peter Burns in the big host chair for Mr. Finebaum. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. Been talking a lot about the future of Ole Miss football. My goodness, the saga that was. The soap opera, and I don't think it's done. It's basically I'm like halfway through the season of House of Cards. I have no idea what's going to happen next. Yet I know something is going to happen, and it's going to change Ole Miss football for arguably the next decade. I just don't know what it is. It could be the NCAA coming in tomorrow saying, hey, you know what, 1 year bowl ban? All right, there it is. 11 scholarships, we're increasing it to 15 scholarships over 6 years. Okay, you're done. Everybody would be happy. It could be a 2-year bowl ban. They come in, everybody transfers out. Shea Patterson goes somewhere else, and it is decimating to Ole Miss. We don't know. That's why I still contend to this point right here, right now, that sports is the ultimate soap opera. It is. There's always something going on. Helping me cover it, one of the best in the biz. You can follow her on Twitter at CFB Heather. Heather Dinich joining Peter Burns here on the Paul Finebaum Show. Heather, what I kind of feel like it's gotten to this point because you cover college football so much and you're one of the best in the biz that everyone has those moments where they find out big news, big breaking news. Where were you when you found out about the Hugh Freeze resignation?
I was trying to order some dinner here in lovely Connecticut, and it got interrupted for a good amount of time. I was like, wait a minute, I need the wings. Hold on a minute. But yeah, I was out to dinner up here at ESPN and found out the big news. I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it.
It was one of those situations where, like I said earlier on the show, I was on a vacation. I get off the plane. My text messages, I get about 75 of them, thinking, my goodness, what is going on? Sure enough, I go to Twitter. I look at everybody's feed. I'm thinking, my goodness, that happened. You've been up in Bristol. You were just over at Big 12 Media Days. You were there. Kind of ACC coaches have been in the house. We talked to David Cutcliffe about it earlier. Have you gotten a kind of a sense from coaches, because I know a lot of times when these coaches kind of go from interview to interview, they kind of talk about stuff. Anybody said anything about what's transpiring down there at Oxford?
Well, Mike Gundy was interesting because he said, you remember a couple of years back we had the Sports Illustrated article come out, and he said, when the NCAA gets in there, he used the word annoying. He was like, it's annoying because they get in there and you do everything on their time. You go to Indianapolis when they want you to meet. So it was kind of interesting talking to him about that. And then, of course, sitting down with David Cutcliffe, who is, he's genuinely one of the good guys in the business. And
Right.
he was like, the irony of it is he was there getting off a plane when he found out about it. It was like that day he was going to see his new grandbaby. His son is the high school coach there in Oxford, and he's a math teacher there at the high school. And so he's just minding his own business, going to see his grandbaby and his son, and hears about this. And, of course, everybody sees him there, and, the rumors start immediately. But he told me today that, well, first of all, and most obviously, he's happy at Duke and he's not going anywhere. I heard that last caller.
Sure. Hey, Nick Saban is happy at Miami. He's not going to Alabama either. So, yes, I know.
But he said that his take on it was, first of all, he doesn't know anything that happened. He knows Hugh Freeze. His daughters go to school, the high school, where Cutcliffe's son is a math teacher. And his take on it was, look, there are people involved in this, and often that gets lost in the news of it. And he said he got sick when he heard about it, just sick to his stomach because of the people who are involved and in the community there in Oxford. But he also said that he obviously endorses Matt Luke, and he's worked with him on many levels, and he talks to him just about every day. And he said, I think they hired the right guy, and he made a point of saying, notice I didn't use the word interim. They hired the right guy.
Right. And, I don't think that they even look at going in searching for a head coach until, if they do, until late into next season. Now, the only good part about any of this is that they will have, in essence, a heads up on any other program as far as taking a look and judging interest from other people, whether it's David Cutcliffe, whether it's Les Miles, all these names that get that fly out. So I think, they do give an opportunity for Matt Luke, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, if I'm going down the wrong path here, but I'm a firm believer they can't do anything. They can't even sniff even scenarios. They can't even whiteboard anything down in Oxford until they know exactly what's going to happen with the NCAA, the allegations against them.
Right. And, it's interesting. We were just sitting there chatting with Larry Fedora from North Carolina, and one of the guys in the room was like, yeah, man, who's going to want to take that job with all that NCAA stuff going on? And I was looking at Larry, and I was like, a little bit about that. Right?
No kidding, right?
Yeah. So, look, the dust has to settle. There's so much stuff still going on. There's probably so much more to the story that hasn't even been reported yet. But, you look at Penn State. You look at USC and these programs that have gone through significant sanctions and scholarship reductions and all that stuff like that, and you you have tangible evidence of exactly what kind of a kick in the gut we're talking about here, right? And how long, years it can take to recover.
Penn State had the bowl ban for 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, and then it was USC had it for 2 years, and it took them 4 years to kind of get back to at least relevance. Right. Penn State was 5 years. And that's kind of the timeline, the hard concrete facts you're talking about.
Right. But you also look at two of the teams that I know I'm going to be talking about heading into this season as can they pick up where they left off, which is Penn State and USC. Mm-hmm. So you just don't have that sort of, in my opinion, death penalty kind of mentality anymore in college football. You have the, man, this is going to derail you for a long time. But there's also a reset button and evidence of that.
Well, yeah, and after SMU got the death penalty years prior, I mean, in the late 80s, early 90s, or wherever it was, they NCAA understood, hey, listen, we have to combat this, but not to that level. Right. And you go back and look at a team that you've been talking about a lot, is Ohio State. Ohio State had to deal with it, and there were no issues whatsoever. Boom. Next season that they did have some NCAA transgressions, and boom, they had an opportunity to bounce right back. Overall, when you took, ACC coaches have been down up there in Bristol, you've been covering them. What is the level of satisfaction or kind of this? Is there a swagger that's different to them this year than you've seen in years past?
Oh, heck yeah. And, it's been a while since I've sat with a lot of these guys face-to-face, like Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, Steve Adazio at Boston College. But there is no doubt a renowned confidence in these guys. And it's not just the fact that Florida State and Clemson or Louisville are doing their thing in the national picture. It has a lot to do with the fact that they are coming out on the winning end in their bowl record against Power 5 non-conference opponents as well. This is the first year in many years that every head coach returned for the ACC spring meetings. They didn't have any turnover at the head coaching position. They have had phenomenal quarterback play. You look at Deshaun Watson, and, it's that
Trubisky,
right,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's that, the head coaches and across the board defenses. You look at Miami's defensive line this year. I mean, nobody's talking about NC State's defensive line. They've got 4 seniors. So across the board, the league has gotten better, and every single one of them sat there and was like, look, I'm not just saying this because I'm in the ACC, but there is proof, statistical proof that we were the best conference last year.
Listen, I agree to disagree with those coaches when they say that, simply because, I believe that they were top-heavy, but also don't believe that the ACC continues to have to go through the grindhouse that is an SEC West division or even an SEC East, which I think sometimes it has been on the lower end. I get it the last couple of years. But that I think it has a lot to do with what exactly you said, the quarterback play. I mean, quarterback play has been disgusting here in the SEC. Listen, if you're a Finebaum fan, you're listening to this, you understand that quarterback play has been absolutely dismal, and maybe that is. So many people have talked about it, Heather, that it's the head coaches, but maybe it's as simple as the quarterback position, which appears to be as strong and healthy as it's been in the SEC for a long, long time.
Yeah, it's good. Here's another thing to think about, though, and this is something that's come to my attention in talking to the Big 12 coaches and the ACC coaches this week, is that when it comes to the playoff, and I'm thinking about the lopsided divisions. You're talking about how great the SEC West is. I'm talking about how great the ACC's Atlantic is, right?
Right.
The Big 12 is going to be the only Power 5 conference this year in the playoff that is guaranteed to have its top 2 teams play. And the more I think about it, the better off I think the Big 12 is in the selection committee's eyes, because you can very well have a number 1 Alabama playing number 23 ranked Florida team, or you can have a number 1 ranked Florida State team playing a number 23 Georgia Tech team. Whereas in the Big 12, you're going to have 2 really good teams who are undoubtedly the best in that league going against each other, and it could be a really big gamble for those other conference champions. Should they lose, they're out. if you're playing. You know,
and it's a game in which no defense will be played, and the final score will probably be like 85-78. That's that's what we've known. That's why the Big 12 quarterbacks always look good in the eye test, because there's not much defense. A little bit kind of like the Pac-12. Hey, can you stick around for one more segment?
I can.
All right, Heather Dinich joining Peter Burns here on the Paul Finebaum Show. Hit us up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. Hit up Heather at CFB Heather. More of your phone calls coming up next on the other side. To the Paul Finebaum radio program, Peter Burns sitting in for Mr. Paul Finebaum. Hit me up on Twitter at Peter Burns ESPN. You can also get in touch with her at CFB Heather. Heather Dinich joining me for a real quick segment here. Heather, who is an outsider to make the college football playoff? This is your beat. And we say Alabama. I'm going to say Ohio State. But who are you doing your due diligence on early in the season to say, hey, I was on this team before anybody else was talking about it?
Geez, that's a tough one.
Right? I mean, it comes out of nowhere, but there's got to be teams when you talk to these coaches, you're like, man, I kind of got a feeling this is what I see that, you know, if you were taking a long shot, who do you like?
Okay, well, a lot of people are talking about Oklahoma State, but I'll go one deeper on that, and I'll say West Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, Dan Holgerson is very encouraged by what he's seen from his team, and I thought that they played pretty well last year, and there was a certain point last season where they were playing defense. I mean, you got to go back and watch the film, but I swear they were playing some defense last year.
Right.
And I think he seemed very encouraged that they can build upon that, so I'm going to go with West Virginia. When you
look at the SEC, I'll tell you this. They'll probably listen to us in the league office in Birmingham. Hello, boys. Hope you and ladies. I hope y'all are doing well. What is a nightmare scenario for the SEC as far as the college football playoff? Is it as simple as Alabama losing to a 2-loss Auburn? I mean, or a SEC East team that kind of has 3 losses somehow beating Alabama or an Auburn or LSU? Is there a situation that you see that SEC just would not get in?
Yeah, I think you nailed it there when you said pretty much having a mediocre SEC East team with 2 or 3 losses pulling up the upset in the championship game. I mean, to me, that's especially depending on what's going on with the rest of the country. But, you know, I certainly don't think that the SEC is invincible to being left out, especially if that happens.
Call your shot right now. The 4 teams that you're covering in the college football playoff, and let's not say West Virginia because I put you on the spot as about being a long shot.
Right.
If you went to Vegas right now, who would the 4 teams be?
Oh, boy. Okay, I would have Alabama, USC.
Sam Darnold as quarterback. I can see that. Yep.
Oklahoma and Ohio State.
Wow. All right. I mean, listen, I can tell you television executives across the world would that have their hands involved in that would be happy. Hey, before I let you go, as you know, Finebaum's always famous for their callers. I had to give you this experience right here. We're going to get a caller in just for Heather Dinich. It's Millie in Missouri. Millie, thanks for joining the Paul Finebaum Show. Hi, how are you?
It's so good to hear your voice, Peter. It's been quite a long time.
Say hello to Heather, too.
Oh, hi, Heather. I don't know exactly what you look like, but you sound like you're a very beautiful young woman.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and pretend I am, so thank you, Millie.
Yeah, anyway, the thing of it is that thank goodness you're in Bristol because it's better weather-wise. It's going to get to be nasty by Thursday there in Charlotte, so I hope everybody's hunkered down and everybody will be safe.
Millie, Doppler 2000 is always the best weather service. Thank you, Millie.
Love it.
Okay, well, anyway, the thing of it is that, Peter, before I forget, I want to wish you and your wife success and everything and the baby and all, and can't wait to see what she looks like, and I pray for her all the time so that everything goes well.
Thank you, Millie.
Anyway, the thing of it is this Ole Miss thing. Why don't they just see what they can do to end it? I mean, this is getting to be ridiculous, don't you think?
Millie, that is a quite possibly not $1 million question, but a multi-million-dollar question that's probably being asked right now down in Oxford. So, again, I think that the damage control is being had, and they're trying to figure out how does this end? Not only with Hugh Freeze's situation, but also with the Houston Nutt lawsuit, and more importantly, the NCAA sanctions. They just want to play football down there, but right now it's not very easy to do.
Well, the boys down there, they're local people. They love the where they're at and everything. Don't you think that they can really make it work beautifully?
Listen, Millie, I know they're going to try, but then again, listen, just I've tried to get out of speeding tickets when I went 85 and a 50, and I didn't get out of those either. So, and I tried beautifully to make it work. So,
well, you can't do that around here either.
you got it.
And
hey,
you know something? Listen, can I mention something yet too? I know you guys you'll want to get some other people on, and when you cut me off, then I won't be hearing the rest of the show because I don't get you on radio or anything.
Okay.
But the thing of it is that we have a university here called S&T. Now, we may not do the very best in our football, but we've got a lot of really smart people who work in very other fields, and they're making inways in other fields. And we're making names for ourselves because of that.
Millie, and here's the deal. I got to let you go, but I'm going to talk to you tomorrow. Will you call in tomorrow? You promise?
Oh, well, yeah,
yes, Millie is in tomorrow. Heather, thank you so much for the time. It's going to be a crazy season. You can follow her on Twitter at CFB Heather. And more of your phone calls coming up next, including we'll have Jimbo Fisher joining us in 30 minutes. It's Peter Burns in on the Paul Finebaum Show.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.